Okay, I thought I would add a little bit of interesting images here. I'm going to Creative Commons on Google where you can get a lot of images that are copyright free, so I don't have to worry and I can scan through these. I've been to this site, Teotihuacan, twice when I was young, just probably about some of your ages. When I was in my, let me see, 19, when I was in a sophomore in college. So right around then, I went to Teotihuacan for the first time with a group of college students on spring break. We had a field trip outing there and cost $8 to take the train to Mexico. And of course, we went to the site right outside Mexico City called Teotihuacan, which for many times in history we thought this was an Aztec city because the Aztecs were occupying it when the Spanish conquistadors arrived. Now we know it goes way, way back to earlier times. The Aztec Empire isn't doesn't make history until around the time of the 15th century, and of course when the conquistadors arrived too, this is when the Aztec Empire was at its peak. So Teotihuacan goes way back to the ancient Mayan civilization, right around that time, and of course a lot farther north area than the Mayan civilizations were. Right outside Mexico City, you have this in the Chihuahuan Desert. You have this incredible city that made their actual. Let me see if I can find obsidian. Made a lot of their profits off of obsidian. Look how gorgeous this actual mineral is. Mineral stone. This is a type of glass that is made from volcanic lava. And so it's an abundance in many areas, many tropical areas um, where there are volcanoes. We talked about the Olmec, which is much earlier, and of course the Olmec even modeled a pyramid-shaped structure mimicking a volcano in their area. So obsidian was around this area, and obsidian is so malleable and easy to use. It's got a beautiful mirror finish, so they actually used it like mirrors and glass. But you can see here, you could also carve points in it. The edge, you see this razor sharp edge here. They said it was sharper than a surgical knife. So that's actually what they used with many of the sacrifices that they performed. So you could get very sharp cuts. So it was just a very useful mineral resource for anyone in this area. So there was 3 different cultures living in here. Today we kind of nicknamed them the Teotihuacans. Teotihuacan means gathering of the gods. And so this was a very prosperous area. In fact, the peak of this city goes back all the way to ancient Roman times. And when Rome was at its peak, this was the largest city in the world. Imagine that. I'll pull it up on the big screen here. What we're looking at here is the avenue. Look at the scale here, and the scale according to the Pyramid of the Sun. Somebody standing at the Pyramid of the Moon taking a picture of the Pyramid of the Sun on the left. And you can't climb the Pyramid of the Moon anymore because it's abandoned. So this must have been somebody that got free permission to go up there. But I have climbed the Pyramid of the Sun. Look how small the people look up there. Yeah, and this, of course, is where they made a lot of sacrifices on the Pyramid of the Moon down here. So anyhow, this was called the Avenue of the Dead, where they marched their victims up to, and they did mass sacrifices during the Aztec time. But like I said, this city goes way back before the Aztec Empire. So Teotihuacan is one of the earliest ones in there. And of course, one of their gods and their teachers was named Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl was a famous priest teacher. They said he was part serpent, part bird feather. So a lot of the ancient astronauts are all over that, and they think, oh, they could have been, visitors from another planet or whatever. But nonetheless, this is how they represented Quetzalcoatl, and he was supposedly the one that gave them all their knowledge on mathematics and astronomy. This is Quetzalcoatl's temple. And this is the rain god. You can imagine the Chihuahuan Desert, the rain god had a very significant role. So that's Teotihuacan, farther north, closer to, it's easier to access from Texas and the Americas. Ironically enough, we talk about time periods when this was the whole city right here, and of course the villagers lived along the outside of it. And the actual Pyramid of the Sun, you see how large this pyramid is. It's actually the same dimensions as the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, and it was actually built right around the same time, even though these two cultures, as far as we know, had no contact amongst each other. So when you think about ancient Egypt, that kind of gives you an idea how old and how ancient this city was. Biggest city at its time, at its peak. But of course, later on, after these cultures dispersed and the Aztecs came in this area, Tenochtitlan is the Aztec capital. And of course, that is in your textbook. We just have illustrations of what Tenochtitlan looked like because it's in the heart of Mexico City today. So these are all illustrations of what it looked like. This is misplaced, that's Teotihuacan. But these right here are in the heart, and it did have a pyramid in its center, and it was surrounded by a lake bed. So one of the things you need to know for the exam is that this was actually prophesied to the Aztecs. They wandered around looking for a land, and you can imagine all of Central America and all the Americas were heavily populated. So they're looking for an area that they could occupy that's not already taken. And of course, they prophesied that they would find an eagle with a serpent in its mouth. It's supposed to be I see an eagle eating a bird here. It's supposed to be an eagle with a snake in its mouth. That's the ancient Aztec symbol. And they did find this. They found an eagle with a snake in its mouth, and it was sitting on a rock in the middle of a lake. So the Aztecs, being the ingeniuses that they were, creative geniuses that they built their city around this lake and then created these canals and this entire irrigation system that allowed the soil and all the area to be nice and navigated. So there was a bridge connecting the little island in the center of the lake. You can see from these maps here, these are all old drawings of how it looked. So there was a bridge and a walkway that connected it to the mainland. So when the Spanish conquistadors arrived, they couldn't believe how remarkable this city was. It was all painted brightly colors too, not in the old ruins that we're used to seeing today. All this sculpture was brightly painted. So they thought it was a remarkable and very impressive. This is how it probably looked when they were being escorted in to meet the famous Montezuma, the ruler of the Aztecs at the time when Cortez arrived. So the Aztecs occupied both Teotihuacan and Tenochtitlan when the Spanish conquistadors arrived. So that's why they assumed that Teotihuacan was an Aztec city.